I don't know quite how to explain it, but the only way I can put it into words is it feels as if I don't belong in my own mind. That is what Joanne said to me on a cold and rainy November morning in a community centre about halfway between Birmingham and Solihull. Now, Joanne, although that's not her real name, she is definitely a real person. She was one of about 15 participants. And this was session 1 of a 15-week mindfulness through music course that I was facilitating. Session 1 is always difficult from a facilitation point of view. Not only have I got a noisy cafe next door with people banging around, but the participants, they don't know me yet. There's no trust built up within the group. And there's always a lot of skepticism when it comes to this whole mindfulness thing. Being session 1, though, we looked at a gentle introduction to the practice. We explored one exercise where we focused on our breathing, and we looked at one exercise where we listened to a piece of music. One of those we're going to look at today, and I'm pretty sure you can guess which one it's going to be. It gets to that wonderfully awkward moment at the end of the session where I turn to everyone and I say, has anyone got any final questions, any thoughts, any reflections that they would like to share? And it was at this point where Joanne sort of half raises her hand. This wasn't a teacher's pet moment. This was a tentative half-raised hand. And she looks at me and she says something I will never forget. She goes, this session has been really, really insightful for me, but it's also been incredibly uncomfortable. You see, I don't quite know how to explain it, but the only way I can put it into words is it feels as if I don't belong in my own mind. As you can imagine, I was slightly taken back at this. Not only was I relatively new to being a facilitator at the time, but I was just taken by her emotional sincerity. I looked at her and I said the only thing that popped into my head, which was, thank you so much for sharing that with me. And if it's okay with you, I'd like to take some time to explore that feeling over the next few weeks. So later that evening, I was then reflecting on the session. And I actually remember I concluded, this has got to be a one-off feeling. What are the chances? It's a 1 in a million chance. What are the chances of Joanne ending up in my session? But since that day, as I've continued to grow my business, we've started working heavily in the corporate space. We've also started working within healthcare, whilst continuing to nurture and grow our community projects. I keep on hearing the same thing over and over again. Not the exact same words. No one's ever said it the way Joanne said it on that day. But just this general sense of a lack of personal belonging, this general discomfort of sitting quietly with our thoughts and noticing our sensations. And now when I think about it, I'm actually not that surprised. In a world where our attention is treated like a literal currency, in a world where so many of us are obsessed with the material or spend the majority of our time focused on external situations, that when we do get those really rare moments to sit quietly with our thoughts, notice our sensations, that because we've spent so little time there before, it feels almost unfamiliar. It feels uncomfortable. It feels as if we don't belong there. But fortunately, this is where mindfulness comes into it. Now look, mindfulness has taken the world by storm. We've all had a friend, a sister, a colleague lean over to us and say, oh, you should try some of that mindfulness. It's supposed to be very good for you, very relaxing. Don't quite know why that was the voice I went for, but there we go. But somehow after decades of research, decades of scientific inquiry, decades of people championing this practice, it is still inaccessible and misunderstood by so many people. And I think that's because there's almost a missing ingredient. And it's going to come as no surprise that I believe that missing ingredient is music. But before we look at this relationship between mindfulness and music, let's first actually understand the definition of mindfulness. This is often where people go, mindfulness is about living in the moment. Or mindfulness is about just being a bit more calm and relaxed in your day-to-day. Or my personal favorite, mindfulness is about being more mindful. That's the problem with these sayings, isn't it? They sound fantastic. We all desperately want to be a bit more mindful in our day-to-day, and they look brilliant in a lovely font, in a nice photo frame on our kitchen wall, but they don't teach you anything about mindfulness. No, to me, mindfulness is simply the process of building a healthier mind and therefore a healthier lifestyle. And this process is grounded in awareness, understanding, and change. What I mean by this, awareness is simply the act of moving our focus and attention into the body, noticing our sensations, our feelings, moving our awareness into our mind, noticing our thoughts. As we develop our awareness, we start to build an understanding. The more aware of something we are, the better we understand it. And as we develop this understanding, something really powerful happens. We become empowered by knowledge of ourselves. And using that knowledge, we're able to make healthy decisions, informed choices. And that leads us to change. Awareness, understanding, change. And it doesn't matter whether we're working with that little community centre halfway between Birmingham and Solihull, or we're working with a Fortune 500 company, both of which we do. This process has been proven time and time again. So how does music fit into all of this? Well, music has a way of hitting us in our emotional core, quite like nothing else. And because of that, it's an incredible tool to help develop our awareness of our emotional intelligence. Not only that, but music is a fantastic way of calming and controlling the mind. Think about how easy it is to bring music into your lifestyle. Your use of music at the gym, your use of music when you're commuting, your use of music when you're working, or simply on your way home from work, and using a piece of music or your favorite song just to help you decompress from a really difficult day. Music is not just there for our well-being, it's also there for our mindset. Just use the example of Olympic athletes. As they're walking out into the stadiums, into the pitches, into the pools, seconds before the biggest moment of their career, if not the biggest moment of their life, what are they choosing to do? They're using music. They've got their headphones on. What you can also do is go back and listen to everything I've just said there and replace the word music with mindfulness, and it would make just as much sense. Last year, my company spent nearly £35,000 on a clinical research trial exploring the relationship between mindfulness and music and the positive benefits. The results were absolutely overwhelming and breathtaking. But what's important is not necessarily the definitions or the theory or the research. The important part is the practice. So if it's okay with you all, I'd love to play you a short piece of music and introduce a simple mindfulness exercise to accompany this piece of music. What will happen as you're listening to the piece of music, at some point, your mind is going to wander off. Because this is what the mind does, right? We're listening to the music, and then all of a sudden you're thinking about your tax return. Or you're thinking about that message you still haven't replied to. Or you're thinking about your shopping. And this is usually where people go, yeah, I'm really bad at mindfulness. Mindfulness just isn't for me. I can never get my mind to focus. It's just all over the place. Mindfulness isn't my cup of tea. And this is where I say, no, it's okay. Your mind is going to wander. That's how your mind is designed to look for distractions and to wander. Rather than focusing on the judgment of that, I want you to follow 3 really simple steps. When your mind wanders off, the first thing I'd like you all to do is just notice where it's gone. Just say to yourself, I'm no longer listening to the music. I'm now thinking about this. Secondly, bring in the attitude of non-judgment, which is just a very fancy way of saying, don't feel bad for the fact that your mind has wandered off. It's not a bad thing that your mind has wandered off. Doesn't mean you're bad at mindfulness. At the same time, it's not a good thing because we don't need to label that mental action with a judgment. It is just something that has happened. And then, third and finally, bring your focus and attention back to the music. Even if your attention wanders 76 times, as long as you bring your focus and awareness back to the music 76 times, not only are you strengthening your ability to stay focused and centered on what you're doing, what you're listening to, you're also developing a deeper awareness of your thoughts. So I'm going to invite you all to find yourself in a comfortable seated position. And when I get to the end of this piece of music, I'm going to leave just a few moments of silence just to give you a moment of reflection. So please don't feel the need to clap or anything. So finding yourself in that comfortable seated position, I'm also going to invite you to either allow the eyes to close or the gaze to soften, whichever is more comfortable for you. as we move our focus and attention into the music. And then just slowly bringing yourselves back into the space. By the end of the 16 weeks, Joanne, in that cold community centre halfway between Birmingham and Solihull, she had developed the ability to sit with her thoughts and sensations with that non-judgmental awareness. So what once felt uncomfortable and unfamiliar gradually became something that she could recognize and sit with. Rather than feeling disconnected from herself, she gradually built up a sense of familiarity with the thoughts and sensations she'd spent a lifetime ignoring. And the music played an incredibly important part in this. It created a space where learning mindfulness felt more comfortable, giving her something familiar yet external to anchor her attention to. And so perhaps as more people find this practice, we'll begin to see more people working with their bodies, responding to the subtle signals that it's constantly sharing with us. After all, mindfulness can teach us that belonging is not something we chase. It's something we learn to feel. So allow me to leave you with one final thought. So often in our lives, music is sort of pushed into the background, isn't it? When we're driving, when we're doing the house chores, when we've got friends over for dinner, it's always there, but in the background. When we bring music into the foreground, something really special happens. It allows us to turn our attention inward, helping us to build a stronger awareness and understanding of who we are. And who knows? If we all spent some more time listening, we might just hear something we've been missing this entire time. Thank you so much.